Sonn already gave us the clue by using the word Bedouin. The moment you use Bedouin, it should trigger in your mind something, which is tribal. Tribal society. Balochistan, the largest province in Pakistan, the northwest frontier province, these are tribal. There is the law of the land, that is the law of Islamabad, but the law that prevails is tribal law. Tribal law will always trump the law of the land. So if there's a case of shame and honor, a woman is involved, it will be tribal law that will prevail. And tribal law even trumps Islamic law. And tribal law is swift, is often brutal, and is often anti-female, which means the honor of the tribe is tied to the woman. And if anything involves the honor, quote unquote, of the woman, the tribe is immediately involved. The question I would like to throw to the class, and we've been enjoying an ongoing discussion, is what is then the role of the male, the American male, in terms of shame and honor? Is the American male relevant at all, or has he been phased out of a post-industrial society?
In the past, the male has been sort of comfortable in knowledge that he's the provider, he's the breadwinner, he's the one who has to makes the ultimate decisions.
If you look at a lot of African American urban communities, particularly in lower socioeconomic gradients, the African American male has almost been completely displaced by societal forces, and that's a historical thing. I mean, that goes back to the emasculation of the African American male starting in times of slavery.
But in general, I don't think you can say that the American male has been phased out, because I think there's still such an important emphasis on masculinity.
What would you say to Professor Samuel Huntington, whose last book clearly defines American identity as white, Anglo-Saxon, and Protestant?
I mean, you can look at American history the way it's taught in most U.S. public schools, and it comes from a very specific place. It comes from a white, upper middle class, Protestant sort of background. And if you want to tell history in that way, then of course that's going to be your concept of American identity. But I think in order to respond to something like that, you really have to have a more inclusive look at American history and to understand that American identity as a society takes into account a lot more than those components.
This is a very strong, it's not a strain, it's mainstream American thinking, white thinking about identity.
If you're like a Washington insider and you start subscribing to this idea that there's this like WASP identity that is the American identity, that is exactly how you would wind up in the situation that Huntington is trying to warn about, that, oh, there's going to be this clash between the Islamic world and the Western world.
Like, I was kind of thinking, why do we need to define the American identity?
Creating the identity only perpetuates comparing that identity to someone else's identity.
If we don't have anything to unite around as a nation, then nations tend to fall apart when they don't have a nationalistic sense of what they represent.
The answer I had to what is American identity is identity of privilege.
If you control the discourse of something, if you can define the identity, if you control what that identity is, then you have power. Samuel Huntington is trying to create an American identity because he wants to have power over this discourse, to be able to influence people's decisions in relationship to the other.
Each society is quite distinct in its characteristics, quite distinct, which means distinct in terms of leadership, in terms of social organization, in terms of social values, in terms of notions of understanding of shame and honor.
The ambiguity, it's also why we marginalize people who don't fit into those set categories, whether it's because they've done something impure or because they don't fit into the functions we've defined as what we need for our community.